Yes, I'm going to share 5 live streaming best practices that you can actually implement for video conferencing, hybrid meetings, for public speaking, and even for the stand-up comedy stage. Actually, let me know in the comments which communication skill would you like to improve as we get started. Guys, we're going to jump in here with the first tip right away. And tip number 1 is to learn to engage an audience that you cannot actually see. And this is probably the most defining characteristics of live streaming, is that you cannot actually see the audience when you're talking to them. And that can be challenging. But if you learn how to engage an audience that you can't even see, you can only imagine how much better that's going to make you in engaging an audience that you actually can see. So we're gonna go through some best practices that's going to help you in your audience engagement. Welcome to the live stream, by the way. My name is Markus Seppälä. On this channel, I help you engage better with your audience. So let's jump into the first tip right here. And we're going to be able to avoid one of the biggest mistake that speakers make these days. Because what we should do as communicators is that we should adapt our style to how our audience is actually consuming our content. And when you learn how to live stream, you also learn how to not be dependent on seeing your audience. And let's talk about that mistake that I mentioned. Often you will hear speakers say something like, in a video conference, for example, you might hear them say something like, I would like you to have your camera on so that I can see you. I want to make this interactive. And that is exactly the wrong prioritization. When you say something like that, I would like to be able to see you, that is putting the focus on you. But all good speakers put the focus on their audience. So my comfort as a speaker is less important than your enjoyment of the content. And as you learn how to engage an audience when you don't see them, you actually can avoid completely such questions. And the focus here is that you should reach your audience in the way that they want to consume your content. Sometimes they don't want to have their camera on. Sometimes there's things happening in the background that will make them impossible. But another example is that a lot of people are going to consume your content on their phones. And in fact, my YouTube channel, most of my viewers are viewing it on their phones. So if we can adapt to how they actually consume it, we are going to be better communicators. But let's take that one step further. On the current live stream, there are people watching this, which I appreciate. I'm happy that you guys are here. But what if nobody's watching your live stream? Is there anything that you can learn from that? And the answer is most definitely yes. And the live stream that you are making is not going to be a waste just because there's nobody watching at the time. Here's the reason. When you're creating a live stream like this on YouTube, on Facebook, for example, you have 2 different audiences. There is the audience who is watching it live. Hi guys, by the way. And you have the audience that is watching it on the replay afterward. And as a speaker, if you're able to speak to both of those audiences, you are going to be able to better communicate your message. And this is what live streaming teaches us. This is one of the few disciplines where you actually have these 2 very different audiences, especially if you record all of your live streams. So even if nobody's watching your live stream, it doesn't mean that it's a waste of time. I'm actually going to show you an example, a real life example from my live streaming career. And I'm going to share something on the screen, which is a YouTube analytics from my first ever live stream. So let me just set that up correctly here. There we go. I'm going to put this on the screen right now. And this is the YouTube analytics from my first ever live stream. The topic was how to introduce a speaker. And in this live stream, I shared some tips and tricks that I learned from the stand-up comedy stage on how to create a speaker introduction, even if you don't have a lot of time to prepare. And as I did that live stream, you can see here in the YouTube analytics, there were a maximum of 4 people watching that live stream. Most of the time, there were 2 or 3. However, because I did it for the recording, that video, that live stream, has actually now been viewed 4,200 times since I created the stream. And you can even see here that for the first 100 or so days, that video went nothing, and then it took off a little bit later on as well. So the point that I want to make here is that just because you don't have an audience at the time when you are producing your live stream, it doesn't mean that it's a waste of time. So the recommendation is to always do it for the replay. And there are going to be more examples about this coming up as well. I want to share one more power tip for you as well, and that is to not make your stream or not make your video or your performance dependent on engagement. It is good to engage your audience, but what if nobody engages back? What you learn from live streaming is that you have to be able to move on even if that happens. And I'm going to illustrate that with a very specific point. At the beginning of this live stream, I asked you, which of these skills would you like to improve? Video conferencing, hybrid meeting, stand-up comedy, or public speaking? And as far as I can see from the chat, there were no responses. And I, as a communicator, have to be ready for that so that I don't get stuck if I don't get any response on my engagement. How does this apply to a regular speaking situation? I'll show you an example. Let's say that I'm doing a talk about my trip to Nepal. And I might ask something like, who here has been to Nepal? That is a terrible way of engaging your audience, mostly because I'm not giving you any instructions on how to do it. But what if nobody answers? There could be multiple reasons why nobody answers. One reason could be that nobody has actually been to Nepal. Another reason could be that they don't want to answer. Another reason could be that they don't know how to answer. Another reason could be that they don't want to answer, or that they didn't understand the question, rather. So there are so many reasons why you could get a no response, but you have to be able to move on, even if that happens. And this is a skill that you learn from live streaming. I'm going to move over to the next point here in just a moment. So that's the power tip straight off the beginning. And I'm going to move over to the next point. Guys, welcome to the live stream. Today we're sharing 5 live streaming tips that are going to make you a better communicator. If you're watching this on the replay, you can actually jump between the different sections of the video with the chapter markings. And there's links to everything I'm talking about in the video description. You can open the video description on desktop by clicking show more, and on mobile by clicking the down arrow next to the speech title. There's also a link in there to a site called Buy Me a Coffee, and if you would like to support this kind of free training right here online, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/MarkusPresents. Let's move over to the next tip here. Tip number 2, and that is that by live streaming, you learn to leverage your skill sets between different disciplines. And I'm going to give you some examples of different disciplines that we're going to talk about. Firstly, when we talk about streaming, you may think of something like Netflix or Spotify, which is, it's streaming in the sense that you don't have to download the content first, you can just consume it. But that's not the kind of live streaming that we're talking about, because that is pre-recorded content. Today, we're talking about live streaming, which is live video production like I'm doing now. And I want to distinguish between 2 styles of live streaming. What I'm doing now is a scripted live stream. I have these 5 points that I'm going to go through. There's even a bonus tip actually coming up as number 6. And by the end of this kind of session, you will have 5 tips that you can walk away with and implement. So it's a scripted live stream, and this is going to be maybe 30 to 45 minutes. That's one type of live stream. Another type of live stream is what I would call unscripted. This is what you would typically find on Twitch, for example. So Twitch is probably the world's biggest live streaming platform, and it is, by its nature, it's a gaming platform. So people play video games and then they stream that to their audience. And the key kind of difference between scripted and unscripted is that in the scripted versions, they're a little bit shorter and there's a clear outcome, whereas the unscripted live streams, the aim there is more to entertain and engage your audience. And usually you're doing something. And these streams will often last for 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And it's more about being active there in the community. But we can learn from both of these. We can learn from both the unscripted Twitch-style streams and the scripted YouTube-type streams. Obviously, there are many other categories as well. But I want to start with that distinction. See, I'm going to quickly go down to my notes here. Actually, because this is a scripted live stream, I have some notes that I want to go through here. So we talked about audience engagement before, and here's the thing: if you can learn to engage an audience for 3 to 4 hours, then you know something about engaging an audience. And the type of content that you find in these Twitch streams, it could be, like I said, computer games, but I've also watched people call scammers tech support scammers. I've watched people make balloon animals. I watch people do concerts. There's all kinds of different activities that happen in these unscripted streams. But we're here on tip number 2, which is about leveraging other disciplines. And I want to compare live stream to some other types of communication that you may be familiar with. Let's start with public speaking. This is a type of public speaking. I'm doing this live. I have an audience. But the difference to many other types of public speaking is that I can't see the audience, like we talked about before. And in many public speaking situations, there is also no recording. Whereas most of my live streams do get recorded. So there's a difference there between public speaking. Let's have another example. Let's do video conferencing. So the tools that I'm using to create this live stream are exactly the same tools that I use to create my video conferencing setup. For example, it's this Samsung Q2U microphone here. It's my Canon M50. It's my LED light here. And even some of the video production tools like OBS, for example, I'm using this for my live stream, but I'm also using that for my video conference. The difference between video conferencing is that, or one difference, is that this is public, whereas most video conferences are not public. So there's a difference. Let's compare to comedy, for example. Live streaming comedy, there are elements in common about engaging the audience. But crucially, there is one thing missing compared to comedy, is that I cannot hear or see the audience reaction. I have to rely on chat messages, for example. But there are similarities and differences there. How about YouTube videos? This is, if you're watching this on YouTube, this is essentially a YouTube video. If you're watching this on Facebook, this is just a Facebook video. So some of the skill sets that we built in YouTube video making, I can use here as well. The main difference here is that there are no retakes. When I record a YouTube video, I will read the same line multiple times until I get it right. Whereas where it's live, it's live. There are no retakes. And the last example that I want to compare to is producing shows. Many of you know that I produce live stand-up comedy shows. And there is one difference here, is that I'm producing this live stream, but I'm also performing at the same time. So if I wanted to put a fine point on it, now, guys, I like live streaming. It gives me a lot of joy to live stream. But if I wanted to sound a bit negative and highlight the challenges, I could say that streaming is, compared to these other things, it's live, it's public, it's lonely, and it's completely dependent on the technology. And one way to read that is that it's hard. But here's the thing, because it's hard, it can actually help you become a better communicator in those other fields as well. There's one other aspect to it, is that so long as your content is good, all those other things are not going to matter so much. So long as you can deliver valuable content to your audience, you're going to be able to do live streaming even if it's hard, and that will make you a better communicator. So that's tip number 2, is about leveraging those other forms of communication. By the way, if you're getting value from the video, hit the like button. Let's move over to tip number 3 here, and that is talk to your audience when they only listen. You may or may not realize this, but a lot of live streams are consumed via audio only. When I enjoy a 3-hour live stream on YouTube about YouTube tips, for example, it's very unlikely that I'm going to be actually watching it. It's much more likely that I'm going to be listening to it only. But here's the potential for you as a speaker. If you can learn to engage your audience when they are not even watching you, forget about the cameras on or off, but when they're not even watching, when you're just listening, you are going to be a better communicator. So let me share some ideas of how you can actually do this. And actually, I'm going to give you another example of this. You might be thinking it's weird to consume a live stream with audio only. But I mentioned before Twitch. Twitch.tv, it is this huge live streaming platform. They have a mobile app. And one of the settings on the mobile app is that you can turn it to audio only. So you can actively switch off the video. But you can take it one level deeper, because also on the app, you can set it to chat only. So you don't get the video, you don't get the audio, you only get the chat. Once again, challenge for you to communicate, but we can learn from this. And that's actually how I consume most of my Twitch content, is on audio only. So how is this similar to anything else we've been talking about? It's weird, right? Well, Zoom is pretty much like this. If you're communicating in a Zoom call and the people have their camera off, they might be doing something else. They might be doing yoga in the background. They might be cooking. So it's actually not so unusual for people to consume audio only. And I also mentioned before that a lot of people consume this content on mobile devices. So what can we do? Well, how can we adapt to this reality? Well, let's talk about the mobile devices first. One of the examples that I often use is that I use these huge slides with super big text so that it's going to be easier for you to read that on your mobile device if you are actually watching it. But what about if I know that you're only listening? I'm going to go back to one of my previous slides here. I'm going to go back to let's say this previous slide. But if I know that, or if I suspect that, no, I'm going to take that back. I can assume that some of you are only listening. So if I have a slide like this, what I should do as a speaker is describe it. So I can say that on this slide, this shows the YouTube player, the YouTube video player. And you can see there on the bottom of the slide, there are these sections that you can click to jump between the different sections of the video. And that explanation is going to be helpful if you are seeing the slide, but it's also going to be helpful for you if you're not seeing the slide. So I make myself less dependent on you actually being able to see it. So that's tip number 3, is to learn to engage an audience that are only listening, which is maybe more than you can expect. But let's also throw in a dumb example here, because what I would like to claim is that you can enjoy the content just as much if you're only watching. I did a comedy show on Thursday, outdoors. I was taking photos of one of the performers there. And in fact, I was blocking the view of one of the audience members. So I could of course claim that, oh no, you're going to be able to enjoy the show just as much, even if I'm blocking your view. I didn't actually move, but that's one thought that I had on my mind. I did actually end up moving. Okay, we're going to move over to tip number 4 here for communication tips that you can learn from live streaming. And that is, create your live stream for the replay. I showed you the example before with my how to introduce a speaker video. Almost all of the performance for that video has come from the replay. If you learn how to create something for the replay, you're going to be a better speaker. And I'm going to give you some practical tips on how to do this. But let's talk about the problem first. There is a reason why you almost never want to watch the recording of a Zoom call. Why? Because it starts with all these formalities. People asking, can you see my slides? They say, can you hear me? All these things. When you record or when you stream for the replay, you jump in from the very beginning. That's why in this particular live stream, I came in strong and I said, in this video, you will learn how live streaming can make you a better communicator. That's what it means when I say stream for the replay. It means that you start strong and you don't waste time on preliminary things. So let's talk about what else does it mean? Or specifically, what does it mean that I don't do? Well, one of the things that some live streamers do is that they play a little countdown video. I'm just going to put that on an example of this on the screen. This is only 10 seconds, but I'm going to show this as an example. So that video right there is something that, or a video like that is something that a lot of live streamers do. And it can be okay if you do the kind of content where you're going to be within 3 or 4 hours on Twitch, for example, and you want for the video to start. But I do not recommend this kind of countdown for the kind of scripted live stream that we're doing now. When people start the video, they should get straight into the content without any timers. So don't use timers is one of these communication skills that I'm learning from live streaming. There's a place and a time, no pun intended, for timers like this. For example, if you want to show when the break is over, you could use a timer like that. Actually, I have a video about that on my channel, how to create a timer, and I'm going to put a link to that in the top corner here on the replay. So let's look. I'm going to refer back to my notes. Yes, indeed. So even if you're not doing this on a video call that's being recorded, you can still take away something for your public speaking as well. The example that I mentioned before, who has been to Nepal, that's just a way to kind of stall the start of the speech. And you should avoid that if you want to get to the point quickly. There are other things that you could take away or remove from your presentation. For example, extensive greeting and thanks to all the people who were there. Take that away, just get to the content immediately. That's tip number 4 that I have learned from live streaming. I'm going to move over to tip number 5 that I've learned. Tip number 5 is that something will go wrong. This is inevitable when you're doing live streams. Something will go wrong with the technology. And if you get comfortable with this in your live streams, it's going to make you a better communicator as well, because you will be able to adapt more quickly to a changing situation. For example, if I'm video conferencing, I always have a couple of backup solutions that I've developed from my live streaming sessions as well that I can quickly move over to. But let's talk about a deeper version of this something will go wrong. The realization after you do a bit of live streaming is that it doesn't have to be perfect. And as soon as you realize that it doesn't have to be perfect, you can relax a little bit, because even if something goes wrong, you can quickly recover. So let me share some examples of things that have gone wrong in my live streams. One time when I used a new piece of software, I actually had the stream set on private on YouTube. And when the stream is set on private, I can see it, but nobody else can. So I did the whole live stream, right? It was a workshop on how to improve your lighting for your video conferencing, but nobody could actually see it. Once again, it wasn't a waste because people could see it on the replay. Here's another example of something that's happened during my live stream. I have a video light here on my right-hand side that ran out of batteries during one live stream. I've also had problems with dropped frames. For example, I did a live stream about how to run a hybrid meeting specifically for Toastmasters meetings, and the video quality of that live stream was horrendous because my setup was not on par. Still, the content was there. It was still 10 powerful tips on how to run a Toastmasters meeting in a hybrid configuration. The video quality was garbage, but the content was still valuable. So it's not a disaster even if something goes wrong. So those are my examples. Let me give you another couple of examples. I watch people who have been live streaming for 3 or 4 or 5 years. They might have done hundreds or even thousands of live streams. Even they mess up the technology every now and again. I was watching one of my favorite YouTube advice channels. It's called Nick Nimmin. I was watching him yesterday, and his power went out. But he has so much experience with live streaming, he just picked up his phone and just continued the same live stream from his phone. And that sometimes happens because he's in a place where electricity is not so stable. He's in Thailand, in Chiang Mai. And the time when it happens before that, there was a thunderstorm. He picked up his phone and he improvised a tour of his office, because people want to, not the office, but the live streaming setup. People want to see how has he set up his lights, because he uses like 6 or 7 different cameras at the same time and all these advanced stuff. So what was a disaster technology-wise turned into an improvised studio tour, which was still highly valuable to the audience. So this happens, like something will go wrong. And once you experience it on your live stream, you will be a more comfortable speaker, even if it happens during a video conference. Let's show you another example. I went to one of the biggest comedy clubs in London, UK, a couple of years ago, Top Secret Comedy Club. It's a great venue. They have a super professional setup there. And their microphone amplification system stopped working in the first half. Like, you know, this is a place that has, I think they have shows every day of the week, super professional setup. It stopped working. But it didn't break the show. They just took a longer break and fixed the sound system in the beginning. So it'll really help you deal with these technical problems once they arise, if you can learn this. Guys, I'm going to share a bonus tip with you as well. If you've been getting value from this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. I post new videos here every Thursday. They're always about helping you engage better with your audience. So let's jump into the next tip here. This is the bonus tip. And the bonus tip is to level up your technology. One of the great benefits of live streaming for me has been that I've learned to use tools like OBS Studio, actually, which is the tool that I'm using. So I'm using OBS Studio to present these slides. I can move them around like this. I can remove my camera. I can go back to the camera only, or I can go to this view as well. And this is a live streaming tool, which I'm able to use also for video conferencing, also for video production. And if you want to copy my slide layout, you can actually do that. I'm going to put the link on the screen here. Just a moment. That's my little banner. You can actually get that at markuspresents.com/OBS if you want to learn, if you want to copy my slide layout. So that's one piece of equipment that I've gotten better at. Let's have a look at the next example here. Also, the tool that I'm using for this particular live stream, I have OBS on in the background as my video production, and then I use a tool called Melon to stream this to YouTube, to Facebook, and to Twitch at the same time. There's a link to Melon also in the description if you want to check that out. You can get started for free. And so that's another tool that I've learned, and I don't only use it for live streaming. I also use it for video production. So some of the courses that I've recorded where I want to share both OBS and Zoom at the same time to demonstrate something, I've actually recorded those with Melon. So there's so much you can learn from live streaming that will make you a better communicator. OBS is also something that I've used in my hybrid meetings to put on in those Toastmasters meetings where we have a word of the day. I can just put that on the screen in one of the little Zoom squares without it going full screen. It's a really powerful tool. How does this relate to a comedy show? I'll tell you. There is a time where we're going to be able to go back and do indoor comedy shows. And then if I wanted to show something on the projector in our venue, I would use OBS for that, which is, like I said, a live streaming tool originally, but it can be used for so many other things as well. So leveling up your technology is something that you can learn by live streaming and then implement in these other modes of communication as well. But there is one kind of power bonus tip that I want to recommend to you, and that is to start slow, to start with the easy stuff. Like if you haven't live streamed before, I don't recommend having a complicated setup. So you don't need a bunch of fancy stuff. So I only have a few things on my screen. I have this logo here, which I can remove and take away. I have this banner that I can mess around with. I could put on a ticker down here. I could do the videos. But what I recommend if you want to start live streaming in order to build your other skills is to start small. Just do maybe one scene. So in my setup, I have this scene, and then I have this. That's only two, and then there's two more that I have. But only start with one scene. Only start with one technology and level it up as you go along. That's the cool thing. And maybe you will end up leveling up your equipment. Maybe you get a better microphone, something like this. Maybe you get a better camera, maybe a better light. But really do it one thing at a time, and you will learn. You will learn the equipment and the technology that you're using. So, for example, with and one of the benefits of using something like OBS for Zoom, for example, is that I can make the Zoom calls a lot more entertaining, and especially sharing slides a little bit more interesting. The setup that I have now with the Melon and OBS at the same time, that's only something that I've been able to get to work after a few failed tries. Maybe that should actually be the super secret bonus tip, is to tolerate failure. So that brings me to the end of my prepared remarks here in this stream. If you do have any questions, I'd be very happy to take them. But let me make one more recommendation for you. This stream is part of a series that I'm doing. Here I've talked about what communication skills did I learn from live streaming. I also have a video about which communication skills have I learned from making YouTube videos. And I also made one about speaking tips that I learned from stand-up comedy. And if you would like to watch this video, click or tap the screen right here for my public speaking tips from stand-up comedy.